This video is about Bloodborne. In this series on the Souls games, I compared them to each other, and that led me to the conclusion that Bloodborne is kinda lacking, compared to Dark Souls 1 at least. Now this is gonna be somewhat negative, that doesn't mean I hate the game at all. I love it, you love it, your grandma loves it. There are more than enough videos sucking this game off, so why not criticize it a bit? Let's get into this. When I think back on the entire series, I can put my feelings towards every game into a few words, with the exception of Bloodborne. For some reason this game feels kinda off to me. I have a connection to all the other games, for better or for worse, but Bloodborne is just kinda there? It's a well-made game, but nothing blew me away or was so bad that it's memorable that way. I think that's the main thing here, but that is incredibly subjective, so let's talk about the game directly. It begins with a cutscene which I don't care about. Speaking about that, in my Dark Souls 2 video I mentioned that only the lore of Dark Souls 1 and 3 caught my interest, and that of course is a huge problem, and it's not like I didn't try. I'm not one of those people that go into the Souls games looking for a gameplay only experience. I want to like the lore because Dark Souls 1 proved otherwise mediocre bosses can be really upgraded by their stories. But I just don't care. And it's weird, I like the Lovecraft setting more than the fantasy one from Dark Souls. I think what really helped Dark Souls 1 was the intro cutscene. It set up the endgame players, how the world used to be, how it is right now, and what we have to do. Meanwhile, the Bloodborne one is mostly there to build up intrigue, which didn't work on me. Whatever, after a little nap otherwise called character creator, we get to play the game but without a weapon. You can kill this wolf or not, doesn't matter, cause you have to die so that you can get your weapon and gun in the Hunter Stream, which is the hub of this game, and it's okay. It uses a Demon Souls approach, so you teleport from here to all the other places, which leads to unnecessary loading screens. One problem I have with this place is the fact that all the tutorial messages just get dumped into this random spot before the gate to the final boss. Yeah, they're not even trying to compete with the Dark Souls 1 tutorial at this point. Now I teleport back to the wolf and engage in the so-called combat. So let's talk about that. On paper, I should love it. My biggest problem with Dark Souls combat is fixed. Shields are a bad game mechanic and Bloodborne doesn't have that problem. On top of that, it has the amazing system of regenerating HP when attacking enemies, which really works with the more aggressive gameplay. So with these things stated, I don't really like this combat much more than the one in Dark Souls. It's weird. Technically it's better, but not enough to make a difference for me personally. After the wolf we get to Yana where we'll meet a lot of villagers. Similar to Dark Souls 2, this game has a lot of group encounters, but this time it works much better, mainly because of the stamina. You have way more of it, which makes juggling a horde of enemies way more feasible. The enemies also aren't as fast. In Dark Souls 2 all the enemies were either cosplaying Sonic or had range attacks that chased you to the end of the planet. While you're exploring, you probably notice that the healing system is pretty different compared to Dark Souls. And it's not good. You can have up to 20 vials. Any more go into storage and your stock will automatically refill after a loading screen. Sounds good. Until you notice that if you run out, you'll need to buy more or farm, which is just absolutely terrible. Farming in Souls games is just a no-go. The Dark Souls 1 healing system is still the best one at this point. Eventually, you might end up on this bridge, which triggers an optional boss but also gives you your first insight. Let's talk about that. It effectively doesn't really matter. It does a few minor things, but you can mainly buy stuff with it. With your first one, you also unlock the doll, which is the level up lady, which fucking sucks, because that's more unnecessary loading screens. In the level up screen, you might notice that there aren't a lot of stats. On top of that, there isn't much armor, or weapons, or customization in general. Bloodborne is way less RPG than Dark Souls, foreshadowing Sekiro, which goes complete adventure game. I don't mind it, RPG mechanics don't make Souls great, but there is a problem. Like Dark Souls 2, you'll end up with a lot of high stats. Most people will completely ignore Arcane and Blood Tinge, which leads to Dex and Strength getting both increased instead of choosing one. Problem with that is, most people will end up with Ludwig's Holy Blade, because it's the best weapon no matter what you build, and that is definitely a critique point. Let's get back to the Cleric Beast. The fight takes place on a small bridge, which makes things unnecessarily tedious. You get introduced to staggering bosses, which I'm not a fan of. It's just too situational to take into consideration, and it also breaks some bosses completely. Design is boring, and like I said a million times, I prefer humanoids, which is gonna be a problem for this game. I'm just gonna get right into it. This is my biggest problem with Bloodborne. The bosses fucking suck, at least in the main game. Almost all of them are beasts who feel pretty similar and I'm not a fan. That's gonna get reflected in the tier list. The mandatory boss in this era is Gascoigne, who's actually a humanoid. Yeah, great timing, I know. Remember how in Dark Souls 1 O and S were the gatekeepers? Your final test? If you defeated them, nothing could stop you. In Bloodborne, it's this guy for some reason. The first boss is the hardest of the main game. He has 3 phases. From one-hand axe to two-hand to beast. If you found his daughter, you can stun him with the music box, which really helps in his final phase. Pretty good fight overall. After the fight you'll get the blood gem tool, which is used to customize the weapons. At least in concept. concept. In reality, you just look for the gems with the biggest attack bonus. Oh yeah, weapon upgrading in this game is even simpler than in Dark Souls 2, but it's excusable since this game has less of an RPG focus. Past the gem tool, you get to the Cathedral Ward, which I really like. It feels like another hub because it has a lot of paths and all the NPCs come here. I criticized Dark Souls 2 for having the NPCs stay in your hub, and Bloodborne does that as well, but for a good reason, so it's completely okay. On top of that, all the NPCs you can bring here are interesting. Ariana can give you an umbilical cord, the old woman is annoying so you're tempted not to tell her about this place, the skeptical man goes to the place you don't tell him about, Adela only talks to you when wearing a church representing chess piece, and the suspicious beggar kills the others when sent to the cathedral. On top of that, they all change or interact with each other as time passes on. Compare that to Dark Souls 2 where the NPCs just sit in Majula and wait for you to buy something. Bless you, Miyazaki. Outside of the cathedral you experience this. Yes, video games were not a mistake. A boring area later, you'll end up in Old Yanam, which is getting protected by Machine Gun Man, which makes for an interesting area. You can fight Jura, who is insanely strong. Your only real option is him jumping off the tower. Eventually, you will end up in a village section, which ends with the Bloodstuff Beast. Another fight with 3 stages. On phase 2, poison builds up when hit, and in phase 3, just being close poisons you. That is okay, but I do have a problem here. The boss has a grab attack, which locks you into an animation while getting poisoned. That, combined with the damage from the grab, causes an almost guaranteed death, which doesn't feel great. Now you have a lot of options, and by far the coolest one is getting beat up by Sackboy. He'll carry you to Yaha Ghoul, which is a bit too much for my current stats, so I only get the cool items and peace out of that place. I go to the Healing Church workshop. At the top you get the badge that unlocks the Ludwig Holy Sword and the gate to an optional endgame area. At the bottom you have a platforming section. Those always work great in the Souls games. Before going to the bottom I land here, which leads to the abandoned old workshop. I'm sure that has some lore implications, but I don't give a shit, I'm only here for the loot. At the bottom of the tower you'll get to a new area and can open a shortcut to the Cathedral Ward. Once again there are a lot of possible ways and I go to the boss. Vicar Amelia is incredibly boring. I guess it's worth mentioning that she can heal herself? Underwhelming. Touching Lawrence's skull gives you a cutscene with the password to the next mandatory area. Before that I go to Hemwick's lane, which just looks so unappealing. Perhaps foreshadowing for the boss? On your way there you have these old hags that for some reason get stunlocked by rolling into them. After a while you'll end up at the boss. Witch of Hemwick is the obligatory meme boss. Every game has at least one of those and there's nothing to say. As a reward for sitting through that shit you get the rune tool, which is another way to customize your character. But it's pretty boring. Like, wow, a few more max vials or a bit more HP. If you're already abandoning RPG mechanics, then why not make these runes more creative, like adding new moves or something? Now I follow the main path, which leads me to a door with someone asking for the password. Past the door you have this. Yep, video games are a good thing. Then comes the Forbidden Woods and I love this area. One of the best feelings when playing a Souls game is the struggle of needing a bonfire. That is pretty rare past Dark Souls 1. Most checkpoints are pretty generous, but not in this place. You have very long walks from checkpoint to shortcut, and in between you have tough enemies and cool stuff in general. For example, the best shortcut in the game. Another Snake Eater ladder leads you to the very beginning of the game. At the beginning you woke up in your Sefka's clinic, but after the first lantern it closed and you were able to talk to her. After some progress, talking to her gives you the option to send NPCs to the clinic. Thing is, if you've paid extreme attention, you might notice that she sounds a bit different, and what she's saying completely contradicts her previous statement. Some might say she's kinda sussy. But with the new shortcut, you can get into the clinic from another way, and there you'll find fucking aliens. At least one. Every NPC that you would have sent there would have become one. I didn't do that, so I've only encountered one, and it drops you Sefka's vial, which pretty much confirms that the alien is her and an imposter has taken her place. Grab the Canehurst ladder and confront the faker. I did that pretty early, so she fights me and is quite tough. This entire section is so awesome. Everything surrounding the NPCs in this game is fucking fantastic. When I talk negatively about this game, keep in mind it's still better than 98% of all video games ever released. I get back to the woods and encounter the Resi 4 parasites. Or snakes, I guess. Pretty cool and all, but I sprint over to the boss, the Shadows of Yanam. Unfortunately, this time being humanoid doesn't help much. The fight is just too simple, they do almost no damage. In the final phase they can summon giant snakes, which will catch you off guard, but that's it. You've had enough group encounters, so this shouldn't be a problem. I now go back to Yaha Ghoul because progressing further would lock me out of the boss fight there. Dark Beast Paul is quite tough, until you stagger him once, then it's pretty much game over. Love the design though. Behind the woods you'll get to Bergenworth, and it is here where the enemy designs transcend from amazing to legendary. I mean, look at this. Or this. Beautiful. In the building you have another overpowered NPC that guards Rom the spider. This fight is once again dog shit. Just don't put ads into your boss fight, please. It's always terrible. At least Rom is cute. After the battle your third eye opens and you see amygdalas hanging around everywhere. Let me tell you guys a little secret. Video games are pretty great. Now you're in Yaha Ghoul again, which is filled with unkillable enemies, up until you defeat the bell bitches. If you look well enough, you'll also find the key to the upper Cathedral Ward. Shortly after the first lamp, you'll end up in the spot in Yaha Ghoul you were before, but now there are 3 NPCs and once again they are extremely tough, especially if they ignore physics to one-shot you. The boss here is the one reborn and again, incredibly boring. It doesn't even feel like a fight. And what is this design? Just a mash of flesh. What was the thought process here? Trash. Going forward, you'll end up in a lecture building, but I went to the upper Cathedral Ward, which is a very unique area. You can definitely make the point that Bloodborne is a horror game, and this zone supports that argument. You have wolves hanging on the chandelier, knocking it down, causing darkness. The tentacle fucks are so incredibly horrible to fight that they actually add to the horror feeling. The boss though doesn't keep up with the quality area, just a lot of aliens. Behind the window you can find Ebrietas, but I'm not quite ready yet, so back to the lecture building. It's a boring area, but it's just there as a crossroad to 2 nightmares. I first went to the Menses nightmare, which is overwatched by a giant orange light that causes frenzy. Lore-wise pretty cool, sure, but in gameplay it's absolutely terrible. Frenzy was a fucking mistake, and the rest of the area is not worth talking about. Before confronting the boss I go to the other nightmare, that being Nightmare Frontier. I hate this place, man. Just look at the colors. You don't want to be in this place, no matter how good it is. And well, let me tell you, there is not much good in this area, just another poison swamp. As the finale you get to fight Amygdala. The most unique thing is the fact that it almost takes no damage on the easiest to reach places. Pretty weak fight, but the design definitely helps here. Now back to Menses, to a very special boss. Mikolaj is a gimmick fight, which is questionable at best. He runs away and doesn't put up much of a fight, but he has a terrible one-shot move. I don't have footage of it, but you know what I'm talking about. Chasing this idiot for 10 minutes to then get one-shotted.
Thank you, Dark Souls.
Now let's do something really cool. By jumping out of this elevator, you'll eventually get to drop down this giant brain that caused frenzy. Go to where it was and pick up the rock so you can get a weapon to +10, but that's not all. Now another elevator has appeared that will take you down into absolute darkness, which doesn't exactly look great, but hey, it's the thought that counts. Down there you'll find the brain, and by using the make contact gesture you can get the best moon rune. Fantastic secret. Speaking of secrets, let's get to the hidden area of this game. If you have the Cainhurst letter, a carriage will pick you up at Hemwick's Lane and you'll end up in Cainhurst Castle. It's pretty much a Dark Souls area in Bloodborne, and it's pretty amazing. Exploring castles is pretty hard to mess up. The enemies are creative and it has a lot of cool secrets. After a while you'll end up at Marta Lugarius. Really good fight. Humanoids are just so much more fun. He can put his sword into the ground, but I don't even know what it does because you can stop it with one hit. Should have given the sword some HP. He also does really low damage. I first tried him even though I haven't played for years. One reason for that is he doesn't really have combos. This move for example. Once you're hit you'll fall down, making him miss the follow-up, which is really questionable. But still, I'd say he's overall still the best boss of the main game. Now that I'm stronger I return to Ebrieta's, and my god she looks awesome. Easily the best design. Every time she swings she has 2 hitboxes, giving her crazy range. In her second phase she begins shooting cosmic laser beams that hurt like a truck. On your first time it's pretty much a guaranteed death. Not much more to say really. I wish her moveset would keep up with her design. Still decent for Bloodborne standards. With her defeat let's finally finish Menses. At the end there awaits Melga's wet nurse. And I have to ask, what is this fight? You're seeing the footage. Has this been playtested? Like what is she doing? In terms of gameplay, easily E tier, but the design saves her from that. Now you could end the game, but the DLC is waiting, and if there is one reason to play this game, it's the expansion. Like DS1, it takes place in the past, which is a convenient way to reuse an old area, but now it's filled with hunters and tentacle Santa Claus. Past Santa you get a boss tease for later. To the right of Santa you have a blood path with disgusting Cainhurst bugs. You can go to a cave with the recycled bloodstuff beast, but this encounter is trash because it's in a very tiny space. On the other side you'll move towards the first boss of the DLC who, like Artorias, has been teased in the main game. Ludwig makes his appearance and is my favorite fight. Phase 1 is awesome. I really like the damage he does. I feel like in the main game some of the bosses had weird damage numbers. Like I mentioned earlier, you can just tank through Lugarius, and on the other hand you have the bloodstuff beast that one-shots you. Ludwig has 2 different jumping in the air attacks. That's really cool, but that leads to me not really learning the attack, but just sprinting no matter what. One questionable move is his charge, because the hitbox is kinda weird. It is way easier to dodge to his right. The hitbox on the left is way bigger. If this would have been the fight, I'd be satisfied, but with phase 2 we get the biggest fan service imaginable. He pulls out the Moonlight Greatsword and spams laser beams. This phase is generally easier, but it's way more fun. He has a giant super beam that will either completely destroy you or will give you 10 minutes of time on target. Oh yeah, his design is also a 10 out of of 10. Top tier boss. After that highlight, we get to the best area in Bloodborne. The research hall gets around 1,000,000 bonus points for the setting. We had cities, woods, lecture buildings. Boring as fuck. Finally something interesting. The enemies fit perfectly into this area and are a good excuse for reusing models. It also has the best atmosphere. Look at this. Some Silent Hill shit right here. Lady Maria gets mentioned by several patients and we don't get to fight her. At least not now. Before that we have these things. Almost no moves and the media stuff is too easy to dodge. It's the obligatory filler DLC boss. Thankfully right after that we get Maria. And she's really cool, but I'm not crazy about her. Her moves are just too simple and her phases mainly increase her range and damage. Also parrying is a lot easier in this game than in Dark Souls, so you can easily spam L2 and destroy her. Once she's done you get to the fishing Hamlet, which hides the hardest encounter out of any Souls game. One of these shark boys is already at ONS or Genichiro level, but 2? Way harder than any boss fight these games will throw at you. There are 2 reasons they're so hard. It's almost impossible to stagger them. I have a plus 10 weapon, beast blood pellet, fire buff, and it feels like I'm only tickling them. Second reason is this fucking attack. It has like 5 hits or something, insane range, crazy tracking, and it never stops. It takes so long and when the dive is finished they keep wailing around. So take that times 2 in a small area. Kinda hell, and I love it for that. Once you've survived that, course isn't really much of a challenge. The fight is still awesome though. The design with the placenta in this area? Fantastic. He uses it as a yo-yo so you can't underestimate his range. The only really dangerous move is this combo he has, which sometimes will fuck you when you're lying on the ground. And if you're not, it baits you into dodging too early. Phase 2 is noticeably easier, mainly because his tracking absolutely sucks. He has this leap which always misses and it gives you a lot of free damage. In general you have a lot of time on target. I really don't see why Kos is so feared. I love the fight but it's not that difficult. I wish we could end it here, but there's a secret boss who's a reskin of the first boss. Ah, fucking great. Lawrence just sucks. His second phase is more unique, but just terrible. He crawls on the ground and spits lava or swings his claw. Exciting. Overall, fantastic DLC, but still a tier below Artorias the Abyss Walker. But well, that is an unreachable level. Now let's get to the finale, and it's German, to no one's surprise. This fight isn't great. It's Maria but simpler. The coolest thing is the arena, but Ishin does that better in Sekiro. I like that he uses the scythe how you would use one. He wraps the blade around you and pulls you into close range. That's cool, but he has this terrible power up move which is just needlessly free damage. Also, like the other main game bosses, he doesn't do a lot of damage. You really don't have to learn this fight, just heal through the pain. He's fine. Gwyn's better though. If you've ate 3 umbilical cords, you'll get to fight the moon presence, and it's a terrible way to end it. This thing looks amazing, but it's so simple, it's baffling. It also has the weirdest move ever. This screen reduces your health to 1, but you can wail on it for 30 minutes and regen all your HP while also doing a chunk of damage. Fuck this fight. And yeah, there's Bloodborne. Great game. It's just that the boss fights matter the most to me in Souls games, and it lacks in that department. Dark Souls 1 also has the best video game world ever. Bloodborne has decent level design, but you can't compare them at all. The moment where you get the shortcut to the first area from the Forbidden Woods is great, but in Dark Souls 1 that's the standard. Also fuck all the 20 seconds long loading screens. I pray to God that you can level up from checkpoints in Elden Ring. I think I'm done. Next time I'll check out Dark Souls 3, which is an underrated masterpiece. With that being said, thank you for watching and bye.